AITA for refusing to split the cost of the vet bill with my GF? My GF and I have been dating for about 2 years and have been living together for about 1 year. When we decided to move in together, we had long discussions about our expectations and rules. One of my hard rule is no pets whatsoever. She agreed and we moved in together. I work odd hours and on call, which means my schedule won't allow me to take care of any animal as they deserve. For example, I might get off work at 5 p.m. one day but might not be off at 9 p.m. the next day. That means if I have a pet, it will have to wait an extra 4 hours to be walked or fed. Also, I love to travel during my off times and I don't want to put up with the headache and expense of finding a pet sitting or kennel. Lastly, I know it'll cost thousands of dollars a year to keep a pet when you factor in food and vet cost. To be honest, I'd rather invest that money. So things went well for about 6 months until my GF asked if we can get a dog because she loves them and have always had a dog growing up. I said absolutely not and reminded her of our pre-move-in discussion and agreement. She spent the next 2 months alternating between begging, trying to make deals, guilting, and demanding. I got tired of it, so I said if she wants a dog, it'll be her dog and she's solely responsible for it. I will have nothing to do with it. She quickly agreed. Just to be sure, I drew up a contract that releases me from everything that has to do with the dog and she signed it. I know it's not legally binding and it's not meant to be a legal document. I just wanted her to know for certain that she's responsible for this dog. She went to the pound and after a few visits, she found the dog she wanted. For the last few months, she kept up her end of the agreement. She walked the dog, fed it, bought stuff for it, the whole work. A couple of weeks ago, her dog started to move differently and seemed off, so she took it to the vet. It turned out the dog had a disc disease that will require surgery and other treatment to the tune of about $5,000. She told me and said it won't be so bad if we split the cost. I stopped her right there and said I'm not paying, it's her dog. She can afford to pay for the cost, so even if I don't pay, the dog will still go through the surgery and the treatment. She just doesn't want to pay for it all by herself and said I was heartless for not taking care of our dog. I reminded her that it's her dog. AITA for giving my nephew food from the trash? I took my daughter, 2, and nephew, 5, to the park. I packed them both lunches. On the way there, he asked for McDonald's, and I said no. I'm on a budget right now, and I probably would have said no anyway, because I don't like wasting food. He argued, and I explained that I packed him a lunch a few times before finally telling him we're going to end the topic and putting on some Disney music for them. At the park, I was distracted for a second and he came up to me and said he was hungry. I told him to eat his lunch, and he said he already did. I hadn't seen him touch it yet, so I didn't believe him, because there's no way to eat a lunch in 5 seconds. I asked for the bag, and he said he threw it away. I went over to the trash, and the bag was on top. I took it out, and none of the food had been touched. I brought the bag back to him and said he missed a few things. He wouldn't take it and said, "It's from the trash." I said none of the food touched the trash. The bag and individual food containers both kept the food clean, and the bag had just been on top of the trash anyway, not really in it. He started to cry and say he didn't want food from the trash. I asked why he put it in the trash then, and he said because it was yucky. I packed foods I know he likes, so I knew this was just about McDonald's. I put the bag back with our stuff and said it was there when he changed his mind. He complained the rest of the day that he was hungry, and I kept telling him to go eat his lunch. He started sobbing at one point about how hungry he was, and I offered him some of my daughter's food she didn't finish. He didn't want baby food. When we got back to my brother's house, he was still crying about McDonald's. Saw it again on the way home, unavoidable without adding ridiculous time to the trip, and set him off wailing. He ran up to my sill and screamed, "Uncle Op made me eat food from the trash." She was confused, so I explained that he put his lunch bag in the trash, and I took it back out. My sill said that's disgusting. I explained that the food was protected by 2 layers, individual containers and the bag, but she said eating out of the trash is never okay. She asked me if I would eat food out of a restaurant dumpster. I felt like she didn't really understand what happened, and my nephew was still crying, so I decided to leave and talk about it later. When I talked to my brother, he said it was okay, that I got overwhelmed, and made a bad judgment call, and to give my sill time to cool down. I'm glad my brother isn't mad, but I really don't think I did anything wrong. My wife agrees with me, but she's my wife. Unbiased commenters of Reddit, was I an asshole to my nephew? AITA for taking back our groceries that my wife gave to her sister. My wife, 30, wife has a younger sister, 28, with 4 kids. My sil is a married Som and her husband, 31, works 35 hours per week. Money is tight for them, but they still go on annual vacations, drive newer cars etc. My wife and I keep separate finances except for a joint credit card and household bill. I also do most of the grocery shopping. This is relevant for later. A couple years ago, I found out my wife had been buying groceries for my sil on our joint card, about $150 to $200 per month for a few months. She said that her sister had come to her saying they were tight on money and that she needed help feeding their kids. This about a month after they had got back from their most recent vacation in Mexico. I told my wife in no uncertain terms that I am not supporting their family. She argued with me saying that we could more than afford it. I replied that I don't care if she wanted to support them, but that's her business. My wife stopped buying them groceries on our joint card after, but I'm sure she told her sister because Sil has been standoffish since. In the last few months, grocery costs have been increasing thanks to inflation. As a cost-saving measure, I bought a whole cow for about $4,000, which works out to about $9 per pound and will last us more than a year, and my wife and I split the cost. Yesterday I went to the freezer to pull some steaks and saw the amount of beef was visibly lower. I checked our security cameras and saw my wife leaving the house with a big box. I texted her demanding to know if she had taken a bunch of our meat to Sil, and she replied yes. I grabbed Sil's keys, we have a copy, drove to their house, knocked on her door, and when Sil answered I told her that and I was taking back what my wife brought over. Sil protested saying I was taking food out of her kids' mouths, but I said I don't care. She already had one roast in the oven. I went to their freezer and they had about 40 to 50 pounds of ground beef, steaks, and roasts from our cow, including a couple prime rib roasts. I grabbed it all except the roast in the oven and drove home. My wife yelled at me saying she couldn't believe how selfish I was and that Sil called her crying. She also said that she paid for half of it and so she could do whatever she liked with it. I yelled back saying you don't get to decide to give away anything that we pay for together and said she acted like a sneak thief for doing it behind my back. My wife is still angry at me and says until I apologize to her sister, return the meat that I took back, and apologize for calling her a thief, she won't speak to me. I may be the asshole because my wife pays half the groceries.